Sir Galleon of Brokehelm considered himself a thoroughly modern knight. His armor was still riveted iron true, but the visor could be raised with one hand. A major technological leap over the old two-hand crank he'd inherited from his father. Unfortunately, nothing in that visor prepared him for the dragon currently roasting the barley fields outside the capital. The king wanted the beast gone by next harvest. The royal sages had no clue how to do it, and the last 3 volunteers had come back neatly folded into urns. Galleon's solution was simple. If you do not know a thing, consult someone who does. And in the year of our sovereign 748, someone meant the Realm Net. The Realm Net was nominally a magical tapestry of scrying mirrors, crystal wires, and bored wizards, but everyone treated it like a tavern turned inside out. If you whispered a rumor into one mirror, it came roaring out of another miles away, covered in breadcrumbs, inside jokes, and 2 or 3 unrelated pictures of cats. Galleon loved it. At night, while proper knights sharpened lances or practiced dramatic poses, he scrolled through guild forms with the wizard's borrowed crystal stylus. Thus, he found our dragon-slaying motto. We've almost never been incinerated. He also noticed most of the usernames ended in The Troll, Stonehide, or Cave Dweller. Galleon, trusting soul that he was, assumed that simply meant they were experts in subterranean species. He posted, "Greetings, brave sages. Need tips for dispatching Flamewind the Terrible. Any advice welcome. Sir Galleon, aspiring hero, currently flammable." Within moments, advice poured in, all of it tagged with up arrows, laughing emblems, and the occasional skull emoji. Galleon copied every line into his field notebook, determined not to miss a single word from these seasoned veterans. First tip, you absolutely need a solid firewall. Second, update your drivers. Third, stack doties, then kite him until he enrages, pop cooldowns and go for max DPS. Fourth, cheese strat works if all else fails. There were dozens more. Make sure you have good tanks. Don't forget to pull aggro with a sick taunt. And the mysterious directive, Alt plus F4, if things get spicy. Galleon underlined everything twice. His squire, a freckled lad named Merrick, found the list admirable, but confusing. "Sir, what's a firewall?" "Elementary," Galleon said, tugging on his mustache. "A wall, made of fire. We shall drag one in front of us so the dragon's flame can't get through." The following morning, they convinced the castle masons to build an 8-foot-high barricade of seasoned pine logs. The royal pyromancer obligingly lit it, and Galleon stood back, coughing in the smoke. "Perfect!" he declared while sparks scorched his cloak. "Now we're protected." Merrick said nothing, though he quietly packed 2 buckets of sand. Next on the checklist, update your drivers. Galleon interpreted driver in the only way a knight could. The young men who drove supply wagons. He marched to the stables, rounded up every mule cart driver, and announced mandatory refresher training. For 3 hours, they practiced parallel parking between hay bales, while Galleon shouted, "Your software, that is, soft leather boots, must remain current." When they finished, half the drivers had resigned, and the other half demanded overtime. But Galleon felt safer already. Stack. Duked. Galleon recited that night, quill tapping. Dots. Dots. Polka dots. Inspiration struck. He instructed village tailors to sew bright-spotted fabric over each shield in his retinue. By dawn, every buckler resembled a ladybug. Merrick, peering from behind a vermilion disc, asked if the coloration held tactical value. "Absolutely," Galleon assured him. The trolls said the dots must keep dealing damage over time. Clearly, the pattern will confuse the dragon's vision for an extended period. "Kite him until he enrages!" was easier. Galleon commissioned a kite, but not just any kite. A a 40-foot canvas likeness of Flamewind's most recent victim, Princess Aurea, clutching a placard reading "Free Hugs." The city's entire Glaziers Guild donated rods for the frame, eager to be rid of Galleon's requests for cylindrical wine bottles, for aerodynamic research, for good tanks. The knight scoured breweries for the largest ale vats he could find, reasoning that any container sturdy enough for 500 gallons of stout would surely deflect dragonfire. 6 enormous oak barrels, each mounted on wheels, accompanied the party out of the city amid puzzled cheers. At last, the company set off, Galleon astride his charger, Sir Nagzalot, Merrick behind him, and a train of bewildered peasants towing flaming walls, spotted shields, rolling ale tanks, and the world's most morbid kite. News of the spectacle spread faster than the actual procession, and by the time they reached the foothills of Mount Scorch, the local innkeeper was selling souvenir mini-kites, reading "Kite Your Dragon 748 Tour." Mount Scorch loomed dark against the sky, its summit emitting periodic belches of smoke. Halfway up, the path widened into a blackened plateau strewn with charred bones and melted armor, the remains of the previous volunteers. Merrick gulped. "Deploy firewall!" Galleon ordered. The peasants raised the pine barricade and set it ablaze. Immediately the wind shifted, blowing embers back into the convoy. Driver Tarvis, freshly updated, dived into a shrub, and 2 of the ale tanks began to smoke. Flamewind, sensing commotion, emerged from his cavern. He was roughly the size of a cathedral bell tower, scales shimmering crimson, and eyes yellow as molten gold. He sniffed, curious at the sight of his prey hiding behind a burning wall that did most of his work for him. Galleon consulted the list. Pull aggro with a sick taunt! He had anticipated this. A week earlier, he'd purchased a rather ill sheep, coughing, feverish, and leaking mucus, and transported it in a portable pen. Now he shoved the bleeding animal through a gate in the firewall. "Hey, Flame Breath!" Galleon yelled. "Your mother was a gecko, and your father smelled of barbecue sauce!" The sheep convulsed dramatically, adding vomit to the taunt. The combination worked. Flamewind's pupils narrowed, nostrils flaring in disgust. With a roar, he unleashed a cone of fire. The flames hit the blazing wall, reigniting it to a brilliant white hot and sending sparks cascading back into the barrels, which were, unfortunately, full not of stout, but of extremely flammable cleaning alcohol brewed by the monastery. They exploded like festive fireworks. One barrel shot upward, spinning. Another rolled downhill, collided with a third, and both smashed into the dragon's forelegs, coating his claws in sticky liquor. Merrick watched in horror. "Sir, the tanks, already accounted for," Galleon said, flipping the page. "Next step, kite, until he enrages." Under a barrage of smoke and flaming foam, the squire and 2 drivers unfurled the enormous Princess Aurea kite. The updraft from the exploding barrels filled the canvas, and suddenly the likeness of the late princess soared, arms open as advertised. Flamewind followed it with bewildered eyes. He snapped, and his claws caught the kite's trailing rope, tangling it around his horns. A gust pulled the dragon backward. The kite flapped into his face like a gigantic wet blanket. In fury, he thrashed at it, inadvertently wrapping himself tighter. The trolls on RealmNet hadn't lied. Within 60 seconds, he was officially enraged. "Dots are ticking!" Galleon cried, raising his spotty shield. To enhance the effect, he began pelting Flamewind with pebbles, painted to look like polka dots. Each impact left a colored smudge on the dragon's scales. The damage was negligible, but Flamewind detested anything that ruined his luster. He roared again, inhaled, and prepared to breathe a flame hotter than balefire. Pop cooldowns! Galleon shouted, though he had no idea what that meant. He decided it involved removing cool things from a down position. So, he upended the final ale barrel, still intact, popping its lid. A frosty gush of foam drenched the area, momentarily cooling the scorched ground. Technically a cool down, and certainly popped. With the dragon dripping beer and embarrassment, Galleon reached the penultimate strategy. Max DPS. RealmNet had been silent on what the letters stood for, but Galleon chose ducks per satchel. He'd bought a dozen mallards from the palace moat, stuffed them into a bag, and now launched them like feathered javelins. Ducks battered Flamewind's face, quacking indignantly before flapping away. The distraction prevented the dragon from noticing Merrick rolling a fresh barrel of cheese to the forefront. For Galleon had saved the ultimate method for last, the cheese strat. Earlier, cheesemongers from the valley had donated a wheel of Gorgon's Blue, so pungent it made goats cry. The knight had ordered it hollowed out, filled with black powder, then sealed. Now, while Flamewind clawed ducks out of his nostrils, Merrick lit the fuse. Galleon hoisted the cheese wheel with a grunt. "Say cheese!" he bellowed, and hurled it straight at the dragon's mouth. By luck, or comedic destiny, the wheel lodged between Flamewind's fangs exactly as he inhaled to char the landscape. The fuse vanished inside with a sizzle. There was a brief, baffled pause, then a muffled whomp! Blue-veined curd blasted from the dragon's mouth like a dairy volcano, coating his palate and sealing his jaws shut with molten lactose glue. Flamewind tried to cough, but the congealing cheese welded his maw. He reared, eyes bulging. Smoke leaked through nostrils, now stuffed with melting cheddar and half a duck. Unable to vent flame, pressure built in the dragon's throat. His neck swelled. His scales vibrated like kettle drums. Finally, with a sound halfway between a burp and a church organ chord, the creature expelled fire straight through his ears. The inner blast singed his own brain pan. The giant collapsed in a sizzling heap, kite shreds fluttering down like victory confetti. Silence followed, broken only by the quiet honk of a traumatized mallard. Galleon lowered his shield. Max DPS indeed, he murmured. Merrick stared at the smoking corpse. Is it dead? The trolls said cheese never fails. Galleon replied, as if that explained everything. The party waited a cautious minute. When the mountain didn't erupt, they cheered. Merrick performed a jubilant jig. Tarvis hugged the firewall, which immediately set his sleeves aflame. But he didn't care. News of the improbable triumph raced down the mountain faster than the barrel that had exploded earlier. By sundown, criers in the capital hollered the headline. Flamewind falls to cheese and polka dots. Knight claims just followed instructions. A week later, the royal court honored Sir Galleon with the Emerald Star of Pragmatic Bravery. Bards, never ones to let plausibility ruin a chorus, composed ballads with refrains like "Dots and ducks" and "Dairy brought low the drake so scary." Children dressed as ladybug shields for Harvestmas, and the kingdom's cheese exports quadrupled. The king, delighted yet confused, summoned the knight for a private debrief. Galleon, my good fellow, how in creation did you engineer such a strategy? We expected the usual spear-through-the-heart kind of thing. Highness, Galleon said, swelling with pride, I conducted research among the wise. Which wise? The RealmNet wise. The king frowned. I have heard troubling tales of that network. Something about trolls. Indeed, your majesty. Brilliant creatures, generous with knowledge. Meanwhile, far beneath a granite bridge on the edge of the realm, the actual trolls of our dragon slaying convened an emergency thread. User Grubgrin the Troll. Did that pink-fleshed buffoon seriously follow the cheese strat? Rockjaw. Stonehide. He did. Flamewind's obituary just reached trending. Muckmirth. We told him to Alt plus F4 next. Should have watched him delete himself from existence. Grubgrin. We're losing credibility. Humans will think we give good advice. Rockjaw. New plan. Next hero shows up. We recommend install malware in armor and use Iron 2.0 beta. Laughter filled the subterranean board. Yet an uneasy respect crept into a few mossy hearts. Perhaps the world was changing. Maybe, just maybe, the line between a trolling jest and a viable tactic wasn't as bright as scorched stone. Back at the capital, Gillian enjoyed new celebrity. Nobles paraded ducks through rose gardens in homage. Cooks invented Flamewind fondue, consisting of blue cheese melted over charred lamb. Posters bearing the instructions. Step 1. Build firewall. Sold for $1 each. One afternoon, Galleon visited the wizard's tower, curious to read the forum reactions. He peered into the scrying mirror, entered his credentials, Sir Galleon the Unburnt, and scrolled. Post title: Cheese Strat confirmed OP, PLS nerf. Replies varied. Snarkling 3. Can't believe that worked, LOL. Grubgrin the Troll. Pinned comment. Reminder. Results not typical. Attempt at own risk. Team Drake 420. Looking for group to avenge Flamewind. Need healer. Must bring Bree. Gillian chuckled, oblivious to sarcasm. They're so supportive. Merrick, sharper of wit, leaned closer. Sir, these users are trolls. They mock everyone. Mock? Gillian said, perplexed. But they gave me the winning battle plan. Yes, by accident. Success seldom sniffs at motive, the knight declared. He closed the mirror and stretched. Come, Merrick. Word is a sea serpent troubles the eastern coast. We'd better consult the forums for nautical advice. That night he posted, need best practices for serpents, preferably easy ones. The replies, predictably, arrived within minutes. Turn the ocean off and on again. Apply a patch, preferably a giant eye patch. It intimidates them. For Water Boss, make sure to have lots of ram. They hate rams. Seafood diet. Eat everything you see. Gillian transcribed diligently, while Merrick contemplated retirement. Days later, the kingdom watched their beloved cheese knight set sail on a vessel whose prow was adorned with a giant wooden eye patch, and whose cargo hold, true to specification, housed 40 disgruntled rams. As the ship vanished over the horizon, its stern bore a freshly painted slogan. Have you tried turning it off and on again? The court sighed. The king clasped his temples, and somewhere beneath a bridge, trolls prepared the popcorn, eager for the next episode. But fate, having a splendid sense of humor, once again favored the oblivious, for it would soon be recorded in maritime annals that a sea serpent, upon ramming a ship full of equally irate rams, became so entangled in wool and eye patch ropes that it surrendered, practically leaping onto the deck to demand quarter. And so, Sir Galleon's legend grew. The knight who did everything wrong according to common sense, but absolutely right according to the internet. Generals requested transcripts of his forum threads. Alchemists studied melted cheese as a binding agent. And somewhere, deep in the bowels of RealmNet, trolls underwent a collective existential crisis. What if, Rockjaw ventured in a later post, we're actually helpful? Perish the thought, Grubgrin typed, though his talons hesitated. Meanwhile, Gillian, oblivious, unstoppable, and armed with the newest list of dubious instructions, readied himself for fresh quests. Because as any modern knight knows, true chivalry requires bravery, honor, and a reliable Wi-Fi password. And perhaps, for good measure, A wheel of especially stinky cheese!